Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. A little bit of controversy. Not that I didn't tell you it was going to be a lot of controversy, because there is. But I did say Amanda Ortiz, Ortiz, O-R-T-I-Z, I think you say her name, Amanda Ortiz. She is the new Westchester trustee. I'd say she was elected under nefarious conditions. The Democrats slid her under the door. And there's a lot of debate now. I think there's a lot of soul searching going on. Now that reality is, she's now been sworn in. She's on the Westchester Trustees Board with Lee Wong and Ann Becker. And she's a registered Democrat. Amanda is. And there's a lot of people there's a lot of statements that she was a registered Republican on the Board of Education site in November of 2025. There's dispute about that now. Apparently she has filed as a Democrat Central Committee member. I said all along, and I was a big supporter of Mark Welsh. Mark Welsh is and was a good guy. And I think people are going to really feel the impact of having a bunch of Democrats on the Westchester trustees. And, people switch affiliations and drift over time, their political thoughts. And it's going to, this is what happens in successful communities. This is why cities become blue, is they succeed for a period of time and they take for granted their success and they start changing things. And we're about at that phase in a successful community like Westchester, where enough people kind of took the success for granted and they wanted to give a woman that was out there pretty much trying to not appear as a Democrat and to have a nonpartisan type platform, to talk about a lot of social issues that people are concerned with when they have full bank accounts and their property values are high, and they're thinking about other kinds of things. I think her campaign emphasized traffic safety, infrastructure, growth management, parks, walkability in schools, and there's a fair number of people who are, those sound like fine things when, again, you have you're not worried about crime and you're not worried about income or your values, because everything's good. So people were thinking about the second tier stuff, the other presents under the Christmas tree, parks and places to walk and infrastructure. And she was out there staying off the hard topics, like how do you continue the growth? I think Democrats don't understand growth. No Democrat does. No Democrat I've ever met, even moderate ones who put on a nice face and they talk nice at events with you, they really have a lack of an understanding of economic mechanisms that drive economies. So the danger was Mark Welsh had a continuity culture from George Lang, who's now the senator in Ohio. They, as a tag team, had built a nice coalition. Ann Becker was part of that for a while when she was emerging from being president of the Cincinnati Tea Party and Westchester Tea Party. But people change over time, and her art moved to the left for a lot of reasons. So that changes kind of how you see things as you evolve. And of course, Lee Wong has always been kind of a moderate, leans to the left on a number of issues. All these people pretended to be Republicans or thought of themselves as Republicans as long as they were in a Republican area, and that's kind of your means to get elected. So this, and I said about this Amanda lady, I said from the very beginning she was a Democrat. She had Democrat endorsements. I didn't think she had much of a chance, but they kind of kept and this is just marketing. This is how Democrats approach it. They didn't go out and put a big D next to her name. They emphasize that the trustees are supposed to be nonpartisan, although Westchester leans strong Republican. A lot of people don't know really where they stand, and they don't go to the trustee meetings. They just know, well, okay, the snow got plowed, the lights work, there's very little traffic, very little crime. I'm good, I'm happy. They lose track of what it takes to maintain that stuff. So she's a registered Democrat, and she received Democrat backing during the campaign, which I said was going to be a big problem. And the Democrats deliberately, and this is where it kind of comes out, as whether or not she was actually listed as a Republican on the Board of Education site, whether somebody fat-fingered it or whether it was maliciously done to try and sell her as a Republican. A lot of people who voted in that election didn't think of her as a Democrat. Even though it was noted out there, the endorsements certainly were there. The celebrations, the cork popping after the election, Democrats certainly wanted to embrace it and say that they've captured a seat. They captured critical seat in Westchester, and now they're going out and they're trying to get a lot of Democrats on the Central Committee, and they're behind the scenes to make a move. And you got to expect that in a successful, any kind of successful community. Almost every city in the United States, once you get outside the city limits, everything goes Republican pretty fast. But most cities have gone through this cycle. They feel successful. They had great real estate. They had benefits for a while, and they get into this share the wealth mode where people are genuinely nice. So when political candidates start exploiting that niceness by talking about sidewalks and traffic and sentimental social things that people are like, well, I can agree on that, and you don't go out and make it divisive and say, well, that's a Democrat. You don't want to vote for Democrats. You want to vote only for Republicans. When you're a successful community, it's always going to be a temptation. And whether or not Democrats clearly tried to sell her, they didn't talk about the endorsements ahead of time. They clearly wanted people to be deceived at the ballot box. Where Mark Welsh clearly was a Republican. There are a lot of people at that middle of the ground. And I thought he had the numbers to win re-election with no problem. I knew pretty much Lee probably would, because he's enough of a moderate that you pull a lot of moderates over in a general election. But I thought that the Mark Welsh people, the way to win elections is really to force everybody to kind of put their cards on the table. And you want to reveal who these people are and not play nice. So there's a little bit too nice with the Mark Welsh campaign. And I know he didn't agree with that niceness, but that's how he was advised. And there's a lot of Republicans who go have dinner with these Democrats, and they all kind of get along. They send text messages to each other on birthdays. They play nice with each other. And that's not necessarily, and they think that voters want that, and voters don't want that. Voters want continued success. And often when you find this desire, the only people that benefit from not having contention are Democrats, because it allows them to kind of reside in the background, like Amanda Ortiz did, kind of hide out and look like a Republican. And if people believe she's a Republican, which clearly people did believe it, based on this filing on the Board of Education site, she always was a Democrat. She didn't hide being a Democrat, and she had Democrat endorsements before the election in November of 2025. And she's filed for Democrat Central Committee member in Precinct 38. So I think people got caught sleeping on her. They didn't pay attention enough, and she's kind of hid in the background, and people figured, well, Mark Welsh has been there a while. Let's try out somebody who's for parks and for bicycle trails. That sounds like a nice thing. So, we're wealthy, we're doing well. Let's give somebody who's a little bit more of a moderate a chance. And when you don't draw out who they are during a campaign by putting your cards on the table and forcing the issue, if you play too nice with everybody, then you're not going to have a distinguishing characteristic that voters are going to remember when they go to vote. And what gets people up off the couch to go vote? Because, again, there wasn't enough engagement on a election that had a lot of people in it. So the way to get all of Mark's people out there is to either have Trump come to town and all the Trump people go vote with some sort of direct endorsement, or you remind people to get up and go vote, and that just because Trump's not on the ticket, and then you want to vote all down ballot Republicans, that they vote because they want to rally for the same reasons they would go vote for Trump and for Mark Welsh. It would have been better to distinguish himself clearly from people like this Amanda Ortiz person or Lee Wong. But a lot of advisors they want to say hi to these people at IKEA, fellow Democrats, and hey, we have political differences, but we can be neighbors. We can mow the grass and maybe share a beer and a block party at the end of our cul-de-sac, and maybe watch the Ohio State game together. And we can put all that behind us. No, you can't. You can't. you can't do it. And when you do it, this is what you get. You get Amanda Ortiz as the third trustee now in Westchester. And now you essentially have 3 Democrats as trustees. You have a former Republican, kind of a play-along Republican, and an outright Democrat, and now the rest of them can feel like they can embrace Democrat ideas much more openly. So you were warned. Now there's other elections coming up, and there's some pretty good candidates that will come available. Mark was hanging on to keep what he and George Lang built as far as economic viability, fiscal responsibility that Westchester was very successful on. And now you have a lot of people riding the coattails of that success that are going to input their own bits on it, and it never works. It won't be sudden. It will happen eventually, but Westchester now has 3 Democrats deciding what happens. And people are going to have problems with it. And remember that you were warned. I tried to tell you, and people didn't listen. They didn't show up on election day to vote for Mark, and now you've got Amanda Ortiz, a registered Democrat. And was it deceitful? Was it illegal? Probably. The filings probably weren't overtly illegal. I think they were intentionally left ambiguous. Only people who really wanted to know. I knew. Only people who really wanted to know that she was a Democrat found out about it, but most everybody went to the ballot box that day feeling like it was a nonpartisan election. Democrats wanted people to feel that way. They wanted to feel like in a Republican area, that's the best way they can get elected, is make it nonpartisan. And that's how they slide under the door. And they're trying to do that on the Central Committee, and they count on people playing nice with them to get a foothold into politics, local politics. And from there, they will, like termites, eat your house. They'll eat everything that's good about it and start turning it into a blue area. And that's always a temptation. And you see it in every city where they start voting for Democrats because they feel guilty about their own success, and they start using compassionate programs to win over, and Democrats eventually then get a foothold into those local politics. That's why most of the country is red, but you have these little blue spots all over these cities because that's the declining condition of a successful community. Westchester has been successful for a couple decades, very successful, and it's run its course. And unless people keep voting for the kind of people that kept it successful, and once you start throwing a bunch of Democrats onto it, then you're going to find you have a lot of problems. And it won't happen suddenly. It will happen gradually. But now that Amanda Ortiz is on the trustees board with a couple other people that definitely lean left these days, you're going to get what you get. And learn a hard lesson and keep that in mind for future elections, because it's something you have to continuously safeguard. You can't. Good things don't happen by accident. They happen because good management is applied. And that certainly comes to be the case for local management of communities, cities, townships, whatever. You have to have good people running them. And good people tend to be Republicans because they understand how money works. And they keep the emotional sentiment out of it. And that's what makes good communities good communities. And now that things are going to be the way they are, people have to look in the mirror and wonder why they didn't show up and vote for Mark Welsh. And they're going to wish they did. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.